Mamastalgia.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Childhood podcast. If you're a sentimental mum trying to give your kids a joy-filled childhood, then you've found yourself in the right place. This is a space for memory collectors, photography hobbyists and pros alike, and mums just trying to do their best. Here we will be talking about all things motherhood, as well as learning to create artful photos of our kids with our big girl cameras. So go ahead, get cozy and let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Mamastalgia podcast. I'm so excited to see you here again. Today I have another photography related episode. So if you're after all the good tips to help bring the photos of your kids to life, then make sure you keep listening. We're going to be talking about rookie errors when it comes to editing. Now, I've been guilty of all of these, and I'd love to tell you how to fix some of these things to avoid making these rookie errors. Let's go. All right, Mama. So you've taken beautiful photos of your kids. You've gone through all the effort of getting them ready, getting them in the car, choosing beautiful location, going through the photo process and all of that kind of thing. And you have created photos that you love and you're excited to put the finishing touches on them by editing them. I really feel like editing brings photos to life. It helps you put your artistic stamp on it and really explore your flair and style as a photographer. It's really cool because I feel like editing really shifts and changes with an artist as they grow and develop, as their expression changes, as their values change, or the way that they see the world. I think their editing also follows. Having looked back on all my photos from the last few years, honestly, I have just changed. I feel like every 6 months, I feel like I have at least like that I can see some very pivotal changes in my editing style. That comes from using new tools or learning new tricks or just, I don't know, sometimes I get bored and I want to change things up a little bit. Maybe you feel the same way. But listen, I've been editing photos for a long time, so my style has really changed, especially since I was a teenager, just kind of like running rampant in Lightroom. Here are a few little tips that I have in errors that I've seen in my work over time. With art, there's not really errors because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I feel like kind of no matter what style you choose to go down, there's going to be people who love your work. There's also going to be times when, you're struggling with your work and feeling like, oh, it's just not looking the way that I want it to look. I just want to preface all of this by saying that style is really very subjective and the way to edit photos also really subjective. So some of these things that I'm going to talk about today, you might think, but I actually think that looks really cool. So just ignore what I say in that case and keep moving on. I always say with photography that we learn the rules so that we can break them. And it's really when we start breaking the rules that we start to find our own creative expression and fall in love with our work even more. But I do think it's important to intentionally be breaking the rules, or at least like intentionally going by what our eye is really drawn to. So in saying that, let's get started. I'm so excited to share with you some of the things that I think we need to be careful of as editors of our photos. The first one is oversaturating colors. Using the saturation slider in Lightroom or any other editing app or program really just will take every color in that photo and make it look more intense. If you use that too much, it can really make colors look very unnatural or harsh. I know you're trying to go for like big impact and like make a statement, but just keep in mind that sometimes less is more. In fact, I think most of the time, less is more. So an example of this might be you've photographed a photo of your kid playing in a field and you want the greens of the grass to look like nice and lush and maybe the blue in the sky to pop. So you increase the saturation. But after editing, you find that the skin tones are looking really orange and maybe the grass is a bit neon and the whole image just feels overwhelming. I'm not sure if you're like me and get stimulated by a lot of bright colors. They personally stress me out so much. I don't know what it is. I'm like just someone who likes like calming space or even calming photos. But again, that's my style. So if you prefer like, bam, here we are. go for gold. But do use these things intentionally, knowing what's going to happen. So in that instance or that situation, we've got your photo of your kid and they're in the grassy field. Instead of pushing up that global saturation slider super high, I would recommend considering using the HSL sliders. So that's a hue, saturation, luminance sliders. I find myself editing a lot in that panel in Lightroom, and the adjustments are able to be really fine-tuned to the individual colors. So you want your greens to be deeper. You can then go into the luminance or the hue of the green and fiddle with that a little bit, and you'll be able to see how you can independently just be mucking around with the different greens in the image instead of the skin tone also getting too orange at the same time. So there you go. And a touch of vibrance maybe might be better than full saturation. And also never go and turn that slider all the way up to 100. Like we're using little incremental changes as we go. Number 2, super dramatic edits that look unnatural. Okay, this kind of leads on from the first point, but I'm just kind of broadening it out to all the different tools in Lightroom. So for example, going overboard with the contrast or the clarity, or making the image look overly processed. You've taken this beautiful golden hour shot of your kid running along the beach, but after cranking up the clarity and contrast, their delicate features start to look really harsh and sharp. The sky loses its beautiful glow and things just look very processed. It no longer looks like you're part of that moment. It's kind of like, oh, it's just lost its natural beauty, you know? So I would say aim for a balance edit that enhances the scene without making it look a bit surreal or unnatural. If you're unsure, I recommend comparing your edit to the original and just dial those adjustments back until it's looking natural. Another one of these is when people go and do really crazy skin smoothing, for example. They'll bring that texture all the way down and the clarity all the way down to the point where these people no longer look like people. And I guess you have to come back to the why of your photos. Are you wanting to really represent a memory with these photos, or are you happy to kind of warp your memory and make things look not quite how they actually were? I know that feels probably a lot like tough love, but these, like I said, are all things that I have done before. Probably a few years ago now, after my Lightroom, I'd use this skin smoothing tool and I had people coming back and go, I don't look like myself. I look like I'm in a magazine. And can we just like dial that back a little bit? And it was so interesting actually, because I was using this for a few years and nothing changed. Honestly, out of nowhere, a whole bunch of my clients were like, hey, this is like a little bit much. And I had not changed anything. And I actually feel like this kind of goes to show how editing kind of comes in waves and what people expect from professional photographers, but also the images that you're creating of your family. We've really swung towards wanting to see very authentic images that do look natural. And so when I was giving people these, in quotation marks, airbrushed images, they're like, oh, that's not actually what I'm after anymore. Like, I want to see little bits of imperfections that make me feel like a human. And even with AI coming out, it really does go to show how much people are looking for that humanity in photos these days. When I make spelling mistakes and things, people are like, oh, it's nice to see your spelling mistakes, Courts, because now I know it's not AI writing this, it's an actual human. So I like to keep these things in mind, that perfection is not necessarily what we're going for either. That's a side note. So make sure your edits are not too dramatic to the point where they're looking unnatural. My next one is inconsistency across a set of images. So that may pertain to white balance, the different tones, or the colors. This is when you're really editing a scene. So for example, you might have created photos of your family all cooking in the kitchen together. We've got similar lighting throughout all the photos that you took. We've got similar colors in the kitchen. But then when you go in and edit, it's kind of like every image looks so different. The white balance looks different. So some of the images are a bit too green, or some of them are a bit too pink. We've got some that are really dark, some that are really light. Some are looking like warm and cozy. The others are looking cold. And so thinking really hard about how you're editing a set of images together. Something that can make this a lot easier is using batch editing in Lightroom. So for example, you'll edit one photo, which is pretty representative of all the images. Like it's a good kind of middle of the ground photo, and you'll do all your editing on there. And then what you can do is you can actually have that photo clicked and you can sync the edits to the rest of the photos. Now, since it was taken in a sim location, similar time, all of that kind of thing, very often those edits will work across all of those images. And not only have you saved yourself heaps of time, but you've also made your images look like they fit together, which is really nice and helps with, I guess, telling a story without kind of being a bit distracting. Then you can go in once you've synced all of those photos, they're looking nice and cohesive and they work together, is you can tweak individual images. So if you see someone's face is too dark in one of the photos, you can lighten that up a little bit with your brush tool, that kind of thing. You can still go in, do some black and white or do some intense cropping on another photo, but at least all of the photos look like a set because you have gone in and you've synced all those edits across all of them. This kind of leads into the next point, which is a rookie error, I would say, is starting from scratch every time you edit in a set of photos instead of using presets. So presets, I could honestly go into, and maybe I'll do a whole episode just on what presets are and how helpful they are for editing your photos. But for now, just keep in mind that a preset is kind of a little bit like a filter. I know photographers hate it when people say that. Oh, they're not filters, they're presets. I know, guys, I know. But for the average person or beginner photographers, nonetheless, these things look like filters. So let's just say they're a lot like filters. And what they do is they'll set each of the different panels and settings in Lightroom to be at a certain place. So for example, a preset might increase the shadows and introduce a tone curve or make things look warmer. It'll have all of these different settings preset in there. And when you click on the preset, it will change your image to have these new settings. It's really, really helpful, especially when you're developing your style as well. So for example, I'll see beginner photographers, they'll see an image and they'll go in and they'll just start making all their adjustments from scratch. I would recommend, especially for beginners, as you get more advanced, you can make your own decision on this. I personally use presets every time I edit still. I actually had some people say, oh, you're not a real photographer if you use presets. I'm like, oh, rubbish. I use them. I use them all the time. It just saves me so much time and it gives me the look that I want basically in one click. So you'll set your preset and you'll be able to go in and edit that photo instead of starting from scratch every time and having to do all of the settings from the ground up. So there you go. Presets can be really helpful for that. Hey mama, struggling to love your photo edits? You are not alone. Maybe your photos feel almost right, but something's missing. Or maybe you just have no idea where to start and finding your editing style feels so overwhelming. I see you. That's exactly why I created Mamastalgia Lightroom presets, designed for busy mamas like you who want beautiful, professional looking edits in just one click. Try it free. I'm giving you one of my favorite presets completely free so you can see the magic for yourself. And as a bonus, you'll also get an exclusive Watch Me Edit video where I show you exactly how I use my full preset pack to transform photos effortlessly. Ready to make your photos shine? Grab your free preset here. www.mamastalgia.co/freebie-mobile-preset. You can also find that link in the show notes. Another rookie error that I have noticed is crooked horizons and unstraightened images. Oh my goodness, this one drives me crazy, but it's actually so funny because it has come into style and on trend to have super, super crooked horizons and super crooked images. And it's called the Dutch angle. I love my dad. He'll come in and take a photo and he'll literally put the camera on the diagonal and take the photo. He did this for years until we were like, Dad, hold that camera straight. And that's kind of what it looks like sometimes with these crooked horizons. You kind of have to tilt your head to look at the photo and straighten it. It's funny because this has become become a trend to intentionally have crooked horizons. But when it's done unintentionally, it's just kind of like a little bit off. Oh my goodness, my OCD just wants to go in and like, please straighten that horizon. And it's so funny because I actually heard this tip on a podcast when I was a beginner photographer. And I looked back at my work. I was like, oh no, all my horizons are crooked. And it's so funny that sometimes you don't know what you don't know until someone says it. So if this point hits home for you, I'd actually love to hear about it because I'll laugh a little bit. It just takes me back to that moment sitting in my car, listening to a podcast and being like, oh my gosh, that's me. I have crooked horizons on my photos. And it was not intentional at that point. Something you can do is transforming and rotating your images in Lightroom. It's a step that I do for every image and I like to do it manually. It comes up with a little grid and I would just recommend straightening and lining your horizon up with that grid line. Or if there's no horizon, like you're not outside, for example, but there's a line that's supposed to be a vertical line, just make sure it's nice and straight and that the whole image doesn't feel like it's kind of tilted slightly. Again, you can use your creative expression in here, but it's a bit of a fun one to actually go back and look over your work and be like, oh, I didn't realize I was leaving everything unstraight. So that's a little step you can add into your editing workflow. Number 6, another rookie error is focusing too much on perfection rather than storytelling. So I would say the mistake here is trying so hard to get everything so technically perfect that the image loses its emotional impact. For example, your daughter is twirling in a princess dress and mid-spin, her hair is flying. But instead of embracing the moment, you delete the shot because their feet aren't perfectly in focus or the exposure isn't exactly right. But I really think these imperfect moments it tells a story in itself. It's almost like, you got out the camera and in this middle of this messy moment, you took a photo. So I would say imperfections can definitely add to the story. A slightly blurry movement shot can feel more alive than like a stiff, perfectly sharp pose. Focus on the feeling and the connection and the emotion rather than just the technical perfection of the image. And even if you've got a photo of you holding your baby and you're looking down, for example, and your hair's a little bit in your face, I feel like that the messiness just adds and tells about you're in that moment. You're not thinking about, popping your hair behind your ear and looking perfect and all of that kind of thing. A lot of the images that I see that I'm like, oh, I really love that. Things are not perfect in that image. Something is a little bit different. I feel like this point almost undoes this whole podcast episode because don't wait for perfection to take the photo. These errors may happen when you're beginning. You're so focused on getting everything perfect. And like I said, you learn the rules so that you can break them. So you're focusing on all of these things and then you end up undoing all of that as you progress along. Oh, that stuff is actually really beautiful and impactful. All right, I've got one more for you. I know this has been a lot. This is point number 7. So you've done so well getting to this point and listening to my back and forth on all of it. So my next one is awkwardly cutting off limbs. And this is messy or not the best composition. So cropping your photos either in your camera when you're taking the photo or when you're editing in a way that chops up little parts of your kid's hands or feet. A head is awkwardly a little bit cut off. So you might capture your child reaching for some bubbles, but you cut off their fingers at the edge of the frame and the composition just ends up looking unbalanced. So just thinking about capturing the whole image in the frame. And if you do cut a little bit off, sometimes you can save it. So for example, if you cut some toes off, I will probably change that image to be a much tighter, closer in zoom or crop. Instead of just having a tiny bit of the toes on the edge of the image, I'll cut off more at the thighs. So it looks like it's been done intentionally instead of tiny little bit of a limb. Well, let's just take the whole leg now. We might as well, right? So that is my final tip. I would say as a creative exercise, I'd love for you to go back and take a little bit of a look at your work, have a look at some of your photos, not to be critical in a negative sense, but just to learn from them And again, this is for beginners so that you can kind of get where you're wanting to be. Have a little think and go, oh, if I was editing that again, what would I do differently next time? And then carry that into the images that you create when you next pick up your camera. I hope that has been helpful for you. I'd love to hear what you think about this episode. Make sure you get right along and connect in with us on our Facebook group and share what you have learnt. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Art of Childhood podcast. All the handy links mentioned in this episode are in the show notes. I would love it if you would leave an honest review on your chosen podcasting platform. And as my son says when I'm getting into a particularly delicious snack, sharing is caring. So make sure you send this episode to a friend who may enjoy it. Go on and make some beautiful memories with your family today, and I'll catch you next time.